I'm a tithe. Sci-Fi looks at him with eyes all wide, like Lev just told him he was God himself. Damn, so you all holy and stuff? Not anymore. Sci-Fi nods and purses his lips, saying nothing for a while. They walk along the tracks. The railroad ties change from wood to stone, and the gravel on the side of the tracks now seems better maintained. We just crossed the state line, Sci-Fi says. Lev would ask him which state they've crossed into, but he doesn't want to sound stupid. Any spot where multiple tracks merge or diverge, there's a little two-story shack standing there like a displaced lighthouse, a railroad switch house. There are plenty of them along the stretch of the line, and these are the places Lev and Sci-Fi find shelter each night. Aren't you afraid someone from the railroads will find us here? Lev asks as they approach one of the sorry-looking structures. Nah, they ain't used anymore, Sci-Fi tells him. The whole system's automated. Been that way for years, but it costs too much to tear all those switches house down. Guess they figure nature will eventually tear them down for free. The switch house is padlocked, but a padlock is only as strong as the door it's on, and this door has been rotted by termites. A single kick rips the padlock hasp from the wood, and the door flies inward to a shower of dust and dead spiders. Upstairs is an 8x8 room, windows on all four sides. It's freezing. Sci-Fi has an expensive-looking winter coat that keeps him warm at night. Lev only has a puffy, fiber-filled jacket that he stole from a chair at the mall the other day. Sci-Fi had turned his nose up when he saw Lev take the jacket just before they left the mall. Stealin's for low-lifes, Sci had said. If you got class, you don't steal what you need. You get other people to give it to you of their own free will, just like I did back at the Chinese place. It's all about being smart and being smooth. You'll learn. Lev's stolen jacket is white, and he hates it. All his life he'd worn white, a pristine absence of color that defined him, but now there was no comfort in wearing it. They eat well that night, thanks to Lev, who finally had his own survivalist brainstorm. It involved small animals killed by passing trains. I ain't eating no track kill, Sci-Fi insisted, when Lev had just suggested it. Those things could have been rotting out there for weeks for all we know. No, Lev told him. Here's what we do. We walk a few miles down the tracks, marking each dead critter with a stick. Then, when the next train comes through, we backtrack. Anything we find that's not marked as fresh. Granted, it was a fairly disgusting idea on the surface, but it was really no different from hunting, if your weapon were a diesel engine. They build a small fire beside the switch house and dine on roast rabbit and armadillo, which doesn't taste as bad as Lev thought it would. In the end, meat is meat, and barbecue does for armadillo exactly what it does for steak. Smorgasbash, Sci-Fi decides to call this hunting method as they eat. That's what I call creative problem solving. Maybe you're a genius after all, Fry. It feels good to have Sci's approval. Hey, is today Thursday? Says Lev, just realizing. I think it's Thanksgiving. Well, Fry, we're alive. That's plenty to be thankful for. That night, up in the small room of the switch house, Sci-Fi asks the big question. Why'd your parents tithe you, Fry? One of the good things about being with Sci-Fi is that he talks about himself a lot. It keeps Lev from having to think about his own life, except, of course, when Sci asks. Lev answers him with silence, pretending to be asleep, and if there's one thing he knows Sci-Fi can't stand, it's silence, so he fills it himself. Were you storked as a baby? Is that it? They didn't want you in the first place and couldn't wait to get rid of you. Lev keeps his eyes closed and doesn't move. Well, I was storked, Sci says. My dad's got me on the doorstep the first day of summer. No big deal, they were ready to have a family anyway. In fact, they were so pleased they finally made it official and got themselves married. Lev opens his eyes, curious enough to admit he's still awake. But after the Heartland War, didn't they make it illegal for men to get married? They didn't get married, they got married. What's the difference? Sci-Fi looks at him like he's a moron. The letter M. Anyway, in case you're wondering, I'm not like my dad's. My compass points to girls, if you know what I mean. Yeah, mine does too. What he doesn't tell Sci-Fi is that the closest he's ever been to a date or even kissing a girl was the slow dancing at his tithing party. The thought of the party brings a sudden and sharp jolt of anxiety that makes him want to scream. So he squeezes his eyes tight and forces that explosive feeling to go away. Everything from Lev's old life is like that now. A ticking time bomb in his head. Forget that life, he tells himself. You're not that boy anymore. What are your parents like? Sci-Fi asks. I hate them, Lev says, surprised that he said it, surprised that he means it. That's not what I asked. This time, Sci isn't taking silence for an answer, so Lev tells him as best he can. My parents, he begins, do everything they're supposed to. They pay their taxes, they go to church, they vote the way their friends expect them to vote, and think what they're supposed to think, and they send us to schools that raise us to think exactly like they do. Doesn't sound too terrible to me. It wasn't, says Lev, his discomfort building. But they loved God more than they loved me, and I hate them for it. So I guess that means I'm going to hell. Tell you what, when you get there, save a room for me, okay? Why? What makes you think you're going there? I don't, but just in case. Gotta plan your contingencies, right? 2 days later, they find themselves in the town of Scottsburg, Indiana. Well, at least Lev finally knows what state they're in. He wonders if maybe this is Sci-Fi's destination, but Sci hasn't said anything either way. They've left the railroad tracks, and Sci-Fi tells Lev they have to go south on country roads until they can find tracks heading in that direction. Sci hasn't been acting right. It began the night before. Something in his voice, something in his eyes, too. At first, Lev thought it was his imagination, but now, in the pale light of the autumn day, it's clear that Sci-Fi isn't himself. He's lagging behind Lev instead of leading. His stride is all off, more like a shuffle than a strut. It makes Lev anxious in a way he hasn't been since before he met Sci-Fi. Are you ever going to tell me where we're going? Lev asks, figuring that maybe they're close, and maybe that's why Sci's acting weird. Sci-Fi hesitates, weighing the wisdom of saying anything. Finally, he says, We're going to Joplin. That's in southwest Missouri, so we've still got a long way to go. In the back of his mind, Lev registers that Sci-Fi has completely dropped his old Umber way of talking. Now he sounds like any other kid Lev might have known back home. But there's also something dark and throaty about his voice now, too. Vaguely menacing, like the voice of a werewolf before it turns. What's in Joplin? Lev asks. Nothing for you to worry about. But Lev is beginning to worry, because when Sci-Fi gets where he's going, Lev will be alone again. This journey was easier when he didn't know the destination. As they walk, Lev can tell Sci's mind is somewhere else. Maybe it's in Joplin. What could be there? Maybe a girlfriend moved there? Maybe he had tracked down his birth mother? Lev has worked up a dozen reasons for Sci-Fi to be on this trip, and there's probably a dozen more he hasn't even thought of. There's a main street in Scottsburg trying to be quaint, but just looking tired. It's late morning, so they move through town. Restaurants are gearing up for the lunch crowd. So, are you going to use your charms to get us a free meal, or is it my turn to try? Lev asks. He turns to Sci, but he's not there. A quick scan of the shops behind him, and Lev sees a door swinging closed. It's a Christmas store. Its windows all done up in green and red decorations, plastic reindeer and cotton snow. Lev can't imagine Sci has gone in there, but when he peers in the window, there he is, looking around like a customer. With the weird way Sci-Fi has been acting, Lev has no choice but to go in as well. It's warm in the store, and it smells like artificial pine. It's the kind of scent they put on cardboard air fresheners. There are fully trimmed aluminum Christmas trees all around, displaying all sorts of holiday decorations, each tree with a different theme. In another time and place, Lev would have loved wandering through a store like this. A saleswoman eyes them suspiciously from behind the counter. Lev grabs Sci's shoulder. Come on, let's get out of here. But Sai shakes him off and goes over to a tree that's decorated all in glittering gold. He seems mesmerized by all the bulbs and tinsel. There's the slightest twitch right beneath his left eye. Sai, whispers Lev, come on, we have to get to Joplin, remember? Joplin. But Sai's not moving. The saleswoman comes over. She wears a holiday sweater and a holiday smile. Can I help you find something? No, says Lev. We were just leaving. A nutcracker, says Sai. I'm looking for a nutcracker for my mom. Oh, they're on the back wall. The woman turns to look across the store, and the moment she does, Sai picks a dangling gold bauble from the glittering tree and slips it into his coat pocket. Lev just stands there stunned. Sai doesn't even spare Lev a glance as he follows the woman to the back wall where they discuss nutcrackers. There's a panic brewing deep down in Lev now, slowly fighting its way to the surface. Sai and the woman chat for a few moments more. Then Sai thanks her and comes back to the front of the store. I've got to get more money from home, says Sai in his Sai, not Sai voice. I think my mom will like the blue one. You don't have a mom, Lev wants to say, but he doesn't because all that matters now is getting out of the shop. All right then, says the saleswoman. You have a nice day. Sai leaves and Lev makes sure he's right behind him, just in case Sai suddenly has a phantom urge to go back into the store and take something else. Then, the moment the door closes behind them, Sci-Fi takes off. He doesn't just run, he ejects, like he's trying to burst out of his own skin. He bolts down the block, then into the street, then back in. Cars honk, a truck nearly mows him down. He darts in random directions like a balloon losing air, and then he disappears into an alley far down the street. This is not about a gold Christmas bulb. It can't be. It's a meltdown. It's a seizure, the nature of which Lev can't even begin to guess. I should just let him go, Lev thinks. Let him go, then run in the opposite direction and not look back. Lev could survive on his own now. He's gotten street smart enough. He could do it without Sci-Fi. But there was that look about Sai before he ran. Desperation. It was just like the look on Connor's face the moment he pulled Lev out of his father's comfortable sedan. Lev had turned on Connor. He will not turn on Sci-Fi.